All right, there we go. And I'll just say that again. Although it is not necessary to show up live for the Teams meetings to get an A, I have noticed that almost everybody that does show up live is also the kind of person who gets an A in the course. What I was hoping to do today, and thank you very much for showing up, 6 people, that's awesome. Most of you have been able to get your kits, that's great. Somebody was asking how much are the kits? Well, the kits are paid for by your course fee that you paid. And I have had a couple of people who haven't been able to come physically to pick up their kits. And then in that case, the department just mails it to them. And if you're one of those people, let me know right away. But I think everybody live on this has said that either they've gotten their kit or they're going to get it in the next day or so. And that's ideal. That's just great. The kit, I think, represents probably about the best expense of a course fee because it has pretty much everything you absolutely need for this class. But there's also going to be some fun stuff that you can do and add to it on your own. I would suggest before you really start doing anything in this class or doing anything significant, I would suggest staking out a place that you can use every time you want to work on this class. And one that hopefully ideally is really easy to clean up. And also carve out some time on your calendar that's repeatable so that you know that every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon you're working on this for 2 hours or whatever it is. And do your best to stick to that schedule. Because I have noticed also that over the years, one of the things that is very common among the people who are successful in this class and classes like it are people that do have a set schedule that everybody in the family knows that they're not to be interrupted because they're working on their class, and everybody in the world in the family knows or in the apartment knows that for that time you're working, you have a dedicated space and you're going to clean it up yourself. It's really important because I've had over the years a few students who were living with their parents, and one with their roommate. The parents and the roommate accidentally threw away a couple of the projects that were in process just because they didn't remember they had to leave the space alone. And if you are like pretty much every artist since the history of the world, you really don't want anybody messing with your mess until you're all done. What I was going to do today is go through and just talk about a number of the things, what to expect about this class moving forward, that kind of stuff, as well as answer any questions. And I'm glad that so many people did show up. And the reason why I like that is because that allows an opportunity for questions to be asked and answered. And it's unless people email me before we start with the meeting, it's really hard for me to answer questions that I don't know about. And I think that this is an excellent opportunity. I was also going to ask you guys if you thought, and I kind of want to do this, and I'm hoping that it sounds like it's a good thing. Since this is online, there's really a very little sense of community. And one of the things I was going to do, and I will, I think, put it in to the attendance and participation mod area. I would like to do something where it's a discussion and have everybody introduce themselves. And I think it was like 75 words to talk about yourself, including, of course, your favorite karaoke song, which for me is kind of like voluntarily removing my fingernails. And say a little bit about yourself, and then also reply to 3 other people on it. And very, very nice, kind replies. The order of, oh, I see that you like elephants too. I love elephants. They're my favorite animal. And they taste great with barbecue sauce. Whatever you want to do. And the reason I want to do that is just to create some sort of a sense of community, so each of us don't feel quite so isolated. There's also going to be several opportunities for discussions in the class, not necessarily a graded back and forth, but the grade comes because you're posting something so everybody else can see it. And that's the important thing. And there will also be, I think, 3 where you'll need to respond to what other people do. One thing I really appreciate is that a couple of you have gone over the syllabus or the Canvas course, and that's how I found out that the dates had not been automatically entered like I thought I had done. And that is really helpful. When you guys tell me a link isn't working or something is going wrong or I can't get this to upload, that really helps me. Sometimes for whatever reason there are glitches in the system. I don't really get why, I don't understand it, but it happens. And if you guys tell me, let me know, keep your eyes open, then I can take care of it. I since this was kind of weird, we didn't start at the beginning of the week, we started in the middle, and the dates were off. I'm just going to ask, did any of you have a chance to go to polyhedra.net and print one of those shapes off? Did any of you guys do that? Oh, excellent. Great. Kale, what's the name of your shape?
I did a icosahedron. It's the 20-sided one.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Could you describe what was going on? Well, first, before I get into that, I would like to know from the 6 of you, what kinds of art are you doing currently, and what's your background coming into this class? And then that will tie into what I wanted to ask Kale. So I'd like each of you just to mention really briefly what your forte is, what you do. If you have a job doing it, that's even better. If you can talk about that a little bit. If you have a job that supports it, that's excellent as well. But I just like to get something of a sense of where people are coming from in their professional journey. Who would like to go first? Okay.
I can.
Excellent.
I don't have any, I don't know exactly where I'm going with it, but so far I've really enjoyed printmaking. Starting printmaking 3 this semester that I'm really excited for.
That's excellent. That's of course the name just barely flew off the top of my head. Guy who's I believe he's head of the one of the arts programs at Snow College, is an expert printmaker. And if you guys know who Jason Lanigan is in the 3D area on campus, Adam Larson is his name. He's in Utah, he's at Snow College, and he is one of the most amazing printmakers I've seen. He does a lot of different stuff. And I think UVU has some of the best I've seen too. I mean, there's some really good things that are coming out. Excellent. All right, Madeline.
Yeah, I've done a lot of like painting and more like textile art, but I'm going into graphic design, so I've been doing more of that lately.
All right, excellent. Very good. How about you, Emma?
Yeah, so right now I'm majoring in art education, and I haven't really done too much with 3D yet. I took sculpture last semester, but I'm excited to learn more about it. I'm usually just more of a painter as well.
All right, great. How about you, Lily?
I am doing graphic design right now. I'm in a typography class that I'm really excited for. Some other interests, I took like a sculpture class, which was pretty interesting, but I'm focusing on graphic design.
Okay, great. And you, Kelsey?
Hey, right now I work as a part-time freelance graphic designer. I'm also a mom, so I'm probably like the oldest one in here or something. I don't know. Anyway, but I'm working toward an art ed major right now, and yeah.
All right, great, thank you. How about you, Alondra?
I'm majoring in graphic design, but I also do illustrations and just like traditional art, digital art. Just I try to tap into like anything artistic.
Okay, great. It sounds like most people are really interested in graphic design, but I also noticed that each person who's is interested in that is coming at it from a different angle, and I really like that. And thank you, Alondra. That it's really cool to see. Ostensibly, there may not be appear to somebody else that there's a bit of a spread, but each of you, even though all of you are doing a lot of 2D work, each of you are coming at it from a slightly different angle. And that's always makes the class more interesting, because that means that everybody is going to see things and build things a little bit differently. So excellent, very good, thank you. And I love also the different perspectives that we have showing up in the class, which is always good. There are a few things that are more boring for me than when everybody in the class wants to do the identical thing. And I'm very glad to know that that's not going to be the case here. Coming from 2D, this exercise where I have you find a shape on that website and then print it out and put it together is a specific exercise, and I've actually had people get headaches doing it and thinking about it. When we are so focused on seeing the world in a particular way, when we challenge our expectations and ways of processing information, it forces our brains to create new neurons and new neuronic pathways. A couple of you said you took a sculpture class. Did you struggle at all coming from your graphic design and 2D background into sculpture? Were the first couple projects difficult for you?
For me, it was actually very difficult to go from a 2D perspective to try and start sculpting in 3D. I found the human head is what we were sculpting, and I found it really, really difficult because a lot of the proportions that you would normally use on paper were completely different in a 3D perspective.
Yeah, and I think that's an unnerving observation, isn't it? And that experience is shared by many, many people. You are trying to fold your experience into an environment that is completely different. Okay, wait a sec. Somebody just emailed me, I think. Maybe, let's see. Nope, okay. I just got a really odd little notification that says, I haven't found the Teams meeting for a while. Is it in a different location? Okay, I don't know. Let's see, hold on just a second.
When I was trying to find it, I couldn't find it through the Teams app. I could only find it when I clicked on that link you sent us.
Okay. All right, I think that this person is having a problem. Okay. Okay. All right, sorry about that. That was just trying to take care of that really quickly. Thank you for your patience. All right, excellent. Sometimes it's a little unnerving for me to handle all this technology, is what buttons to push and everything, because things don't always come back the way I expect them to when I get back to the main screen. Like right now, I was having running commentary in the chat box, but now that running commentary is gone. So I don't know. I don't know what button I pushed. Sigh. Oh well. Okay, but we're back. So you noticed, hey Jaden, you noticed that there was a specific difference, and it was difficult, and sometimes it was difficult switching from 2D to the sculpting realm. And what this exercise where you go and find a side with at least a form with at least 7 different faces, then cut it out and fold it together. I want you to do that because I also want you to be thinking about how did the flat paper transform as you were cutting, bending, and folding it together. Kale, would you mind saying a little bit about that? Did you notice a transformation, and what can you say about it?
Well, I mean, it started out as just a flat 2D plane, and then there were a bunch of little tabs that I had to fold up and glue into the backs of the other pieces, so it eventually formed into the shape as it all came together. Now it's 3-dimensional instead of 2.
Now, one observation that people have made is that everything is with angles and things like that. They're cutting stuff, but they're not seeing how it goes together until they start folding it and putting it together. And then it's almost a surprise. Did you have that kind of experience at all?
Yeah, the beginning part, it kind of made total sense how it went together, but about halfway through it, when part of it was put together and the other half was still dangling out, it didn't really look like it was all gonna come together the right way, and I thought I'd messed it all up, but I just kept going with it, and eventually it came together.
All right, good, excellent. And so this part of the thing, it is a simple exercise, but as you put them together, kind of pay attention to how the shape of the paper transforms as you do what, like Kale was saying, as you cut it out and fold it together. And some people have also mentioned that there's like a little switch that they can feel toggling somewhere in the back of their brain, and it clicks and they can see, oh yeah, that's how it works, before they're all done with it. And I would like to hear back from you later, like next week, if anybody has that kind of same experience. And Jaden, when you're able to, I was also asking people to kind of talk a little bit about what they come from. You know, what is the media that they enjoy the most doing, 2D or 3D, and what do they see themselves going into a little bit. Would you like to talk about that really briefly? Just mention it really shortly about your own background.
Sure. And you can hear me, right?
Yeah.
I think I'm mostly like a 2D type of person, because of like just drawings a lot when it comes to like 2-dimensional characters on a piece of paper usually. And I mean, sometimes like doing a 3D is a little bit difficult, but it's just like still fairly simple to do. If you like do any types of like research or just like get a little bit of practice in it.
All right, excellent. So everybody pretty much is coming to this with a 2D background with a little bit of 3D experience. I would like, thank you, Jaden. One thing I would like to have everybody be mindful of as we do this is that there is going to be a project. I don't know which one it's going to be for you, but there is going to be a project that is going to be really irritating. And it may even be significantly frustrating. Keep in mind that that's what this class is for, to kind of be irritating and frustrating, to kind of force you to think away from the paths that you're used to. So when you come to that, don't give up, just keep going. And I don't like the phrase powering through, because that's not what you're really doing. You're just sticking with it and carrying through. So whatever project that is for you, if you feel yourself bogging down and losing momentum, let me know, and I'll see what I can do that might help. Now, there's a couple things that I wanted to touch on as well. You'll see in the first module, there's a little video that we're required to share from the department, from the school. And then I also talk a little bit about the tools of artistic critique and the necessity for creating work logs and recording time spent. Talk a little bit about working towards a globalist intersectional designation, and talk a little bit about Canvas and things like that. What I would like to do is address those pretty quickly. The exceptional care thing, the message from the department, go over that when you can. I think it's just a short video to watch. But the tools of artistic critique, they are specifically geared for art, but I think they can apply to absolutely everything. Even if you are going to go into something completely different as you move forward, maybe you get sick and tired of painting and you want to go and drive a garbage truck or something. You can still apply these tools of artistic critique. What is the first thing that comes to mind when you hear a word like critical or critique or critic even? What's the first thing that comes to mind, and is it generally going to be positive or negative?
It has like a negative connotation to it.
Yeah, I think so. That's when somebody says they want to critique my work, I'm thinking, oh crap, what did I do? And a lot of the time when we hear that somebody's being critical, we know that means they're pointing out all the quote unquote flaws. And I think that is, in an art setting especially, it's particularly destructive with, coming into critique and exploration with that kind of a mindset. And as an artist, who is going to be your own worst critic? We are, as artists, generally, most of us are mildly neurotic, but we have some level of OCD. And that level of OCD kind of informs how we do what we do so that we can get to a point where we feel that it's right. But the problem with that is we are unwilling to give ourselves the benefit of a doubt or the fair shake that we would anybody else when we're asked to comment on their work. And so when you do look at your own work, after you learn about these tools, I would like you to do your best to pretend that it's the first time you've ever seen it and you don't know who's making it. Of course, you're not going to be able to do that, but if you pretend, I hope that you're going to be able to give yourself benefit of a doubt. I did have one class where somebody was doing a self-critique, and they were doing their best to pretend that they had never seen this work before, and they realized that they had actually done a really good job. And that's something that I think is vital for everybody to realize, that if you have been doing art as long as you guys have and you're still doing it, that means that you have something to offer. All right, Lily, we'll see you later. What critique, and critical all have in common is that they actually mean intentional. So you're thinking, or you're processing, or you're observing with a purpose. You have an agenda to follow. And I think when you critique something, you also, since you're going to be doing your thinking intentionally, but it's also important to do your best to use precise language. I think one of the most horrible things we can hear is when somebody looks at our work kind of rolls their eyes a little bit and says, "Oh yeah, it's really pretty." I mean, what does that tell you? That doesn't give you any information. If there's something that you wish that you could fix or something that you could do better, when somebody tells you it's pretty, what good is that? You know, or if you're, and especially if you're telling another artist, "Oh yeah, I like it," that's pleasant. You know, it's a good comment, but it really doesn't help. And so that's why it's important to remember that when it comes to critiquing and critical thinking, we are talking about thinking with intention and using precise language. All right. In the model of artistic critique that we are going to be using, there are 4 tools. And as we go through the tools in order, I want you to be thinking about how much of yourself is injected in the comments that you make and the language that you use as you pass through each of the tools. And on that page as well, I believe towards the bottom is a video that is 2 art historians talking about a sculpture by Henry Moore. And at the beginning, you're looking at it and you think, okay, who cares about this? And by the end, because of their precise language, because of their intentional processing, I think it's very difficult to come away without a better or greater appreciation for what you've seen. And that is going to be true of absolutely every subject that you use to apply the tools of artistic critique. The first tool is description. This is where you try to use your best and most precise language to explain your observations on how this object that we're looking at impacts the physical world. So for example, if we are looking at a pen, when we describe it, what kinds of things would you talk about if you're looking at a pen? Maybe how long it is, the diameter, if it has an unusual shape or if it's a fairly standard shape. Are there any markings on the pen barrel? Is it heavy or is it light? What kind of materials is it made out of? Does it look like it's made out of bamboo or turned wood, or does it look like it's made out of vacuum formed plastic? So even just then, in a short little period that we spent on description, we can begin to appreciate the object that's in front of it instead of just saying something like, "Oh, it's a pen." Can everybody see that? Let's see. Okay, can you guys see this? This page? Can anybody see it?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
All right, so that first, excellent, thank you. So that first one is description. And on this page, what we've done is put in at least a couple questions that you can ask yourself as you're looking at it. And especially when you're doing your self-critique, if you start off with a description, you're going to be distancing yourself from the emotional attachment you have with that piece, and it helps you to better analyze what you're looking at, better critique it. The second step, analyze. This is where we get into the how of what we're looking at. How did the person maybe put this together? How did they, or what kind of materials are being used or that require them to be worked in the way that they were worked in? Did the person seem to take a lot of care sanding one area or carving another area? Does it look like the artist picked those materials on purpose? Does it look like they spent a long time on it? Does it look like they spent just a little bit of time on it? Does it look like it was thrown together? Or sometimes, does it look like it was carefully assembled to look like it was thrown together? So we're asking for a little bit of our own imagination to come in, trying to figure out how the artist made what they made. Then the third one is interpretation. This is where we start getting into the why. Why do we think the artist did that? Is there anything that is obvious that the artist is trying to communicate? Are there symbols involved? And the symbols could be visible symbols, but they could also be, say, for example, if a person uses toothpicks on a sculpture, if they lay them out flat, that is going to demonstrate a different why than if the toothpicks are put or attached to the sculpture point out. And one of the reasons is if it's laying flat, the toothpicks are going to look more like fur, perhaps, or a covering like that. And if they're point out, it's going to give a completely different impression of emotion altogether. So we're injecting a little bit more of our imagination into our observation. And this is where we can begin to almost hold a conversation with the artist. The artist doesn't have to be there for us to have a conversation with them. Instead of a direct one-to-one living person conversation, it's more of a interacting with the evidence of somebody through their art and then reacting to how we feel about their art. How are we thinking about what we're feeling? And sometimes it can help to even kind of imagine the artist in front of you and kind of ask them a little bit in your mind, what did you mean by this? And maybe you'll get an answer, maybe not, but it is an interesting way to approach that interpretation tool. Is the work completely inaccessible, or does it relate to you? Is the work demonstrative of a specific set of worldviews or a specific perspective? Is it a perspective that you're comfortable with or not? These are the questions that we fit into interpretation. And then the last question to consider, the last tool, is evaluating. And when we evaluate, what we're asking ourselves is, do we feel that this work, whatever it is, do we feel that it was successful? I think sometimes that can be hard when we know it's our own work, because in addition to being our own worst critics, I think all of us have that kind of imposter syndrome. Where in the back of our head, we're asking ourselves, we're saying to ourselves, I don't really think they know that I'm just an ordinary person. I'm trying to pretend to be an artist, and I don't think they know that I'm no good. So that when we look at our own work, the evaluating can be particularly challenging. And that's why I invite you to pretend as much as you possibly can that when you do self-critiques, you separate yourself as much as possible from being personally attached to the work. But those four principles, they actually, they are specific to art because it's called 4 Tools of Artistic Critique, but they do apply to situation, events, and things that have nothing to do with the little fenced-in yard that we call the art world. If you, after leaving this class, you are going to be going to drive a pickup truck or a dump truck for somebody, you are still going to be way ahead, processing situations that come your way, applying these 4 tools. Separating yourself emotionally from what's going on so that you can start to describe what's going on, then analyze, how did it get this way, or how was it done? Then the why, why did people make these choices that led to this situation? And then the evaluate, is it going to be successful if it continues, or do I have to step in and change things? So you can you see that this is applicable? This kind of process of critical thinking or intentful thinking is applicable to most things. And as we move forward through the term and you become more and more familiar with applying this process, I think you'll see how much more applicable it is as we go forward. Another thing I want to talk about is the necessity for work logs and recording time spent. how many of you already have a significant amount of experience doing commission work for people? And how many of you are just now getting started? And another question is, how many of you have jobs that are tying in with what you're doing somehow?
I have a little bit of experience with keeping track of the time for my commissioned work, but not a lot.
Okay. I think when you're starting out, sometimes it's a little bit more difficult to be aware of the practical need for that, but I'm glad you have had some experience. Did it help you when you were collecting from the client, or did it help you so that you had you could see that you had made a fair evaluation of your own work?
It started, I don't really keep track of time as much anymore. It started out at the beginning to kind of see how long each project would take me. And now I'm paid per project instead of for the amount of time. But it did
Okay.
help work out a fair price for everything at the beginning.
All right, good. I think that this is one of the reasons why this kind of thing is important, keeping track, because it does help us to establish the value of the time that we bring to the table. Everything we do has a valuation related directly to time, either the time we've spent in the past educating ourselves and getting the experience so that in the present we can do a better and faster job, or in the time itself it takes just to complete something. And if you do something very similar and several different and you do it over and over again, after a while you do develop a pretty good sense of how long it will take, and that does help to charge when it comes to charging. And as you do commission work for people, it's a good idea to have in the back of your head so that you know how much you're going to be spending on materials and how much time you're going to be using, so that you can give them a price. Most of the time, I think it's a lot easier for a customer to deal with just a straight price instead of charging them for your labor as well. But if you keep track of your time and understand how quickly you can work, then you can make that flat price more fair for both of you. The department has asked us to keep track of these kinds of projects, see how long they take. And so for each of the projects that you are required to do, you're also required to submit a work log. And I give a sample work log. So I think almost all of them that ask for work logs have also samples attached. And basically it is as complicated and rigorous as Tuesday, I spent 15 minutes doing this and about another 45 minutes doing this. And then on Thursday, I just buckled down and did 6.5 hours, just trying to pound it out. And then on Friday, I was able to finish the rest of it over about 2 hours and 15 minutes. And that's about as rigorous as we want, or that I need. I have had students that will give the exact minute to minute count, which you don't need to do. But what I do appreciate is when somebody doing a module will say, okay, well, I spent 15 hours or 15 minutes connecting to archive.org because they were being a pain in the neck. Then I was able to get my quiz done pretty quickly. And I spent about 2 hours watching the videos and writing the essay that I needed to. And then I spent about another 6 hours the next day working on the project. And so if there's a breakdown for what kinds of elements of the module you worked on and how long you took on those, that's really good too. What I don't appreciate is, and it doesn't do anybody any good, when somebody just leaves a note that says 12 and a half hours. Well, 12 and a half hours doing what? If it was, 1.5 hours working on it over here, 2.5 hours working on the writing parts of the module and posting, and then the rest of it I spent building, that gives me the information that shows you really are paying attention and you're trying. The issue is with the time spent and the work logs is that it is a requirement for our class that comes from the department. So we've got to do it, and might as well couch it in terms so that we can prepare for our future professional careers. Now, this course, when Jason and I were revamping the 3D design course, one of the things we felt very strongly about is we didn't want to stay with the typical canon of artists that most of us are very familiar with. Generally, that canon of artists is going to have a couple of outliers, but for the most part, it's going to be mostly dead white European men. Excuse me. And we really wanted to bring in some other things. So there are people from every inhabited continent. There are people from many, many different backgrounds. There are people from, one of my favorites is a guy named Elanit Tsui. I believe he's from Ghana. But these guys are all amazing. And Ai Weiwei, you probably heard of him. He's from China. So, and one of my favorite, my very favorite is Betty Saar. She is absolutely amazing. She's a woman from California. So, truly international. But what you'll need to be doing when we go to the artist background thing is you'll notice that, well, I'm sorry, I'll back up a little bit. The little section working towards a GI designation, it's a 2-point quiz, and all I need you to do on that is watch the video there so you can be aware of the GI designation, and you can keep your eyes open because one of the things that you can do to graduate is get a cord that represents you went through the GI designation program. And I think that means you've taken 6 courses that are designated with the GI distinction. And that's globalist and intersectional. That means that we are working to appreciate art in the context of the entire world and not as something that only has validity coming from one area of the planet. And so, be mindful of that. Like I said, it's a really quick little quiz to take. And how many of you have already done the Canvas tour for students? For one of your other classes. Has any of you done that?
I have, but it was a couple years ago.
Well, if you have, and you still have the little sticker or whatever, take a screenshot of it, and that will qualify for points for that. If you haven't ever taken it, what's that, Kelsey?
Oh, I was just going to say, yeah, I turned that in today already. So.
All right, that's all you need to do. If you've taken it at any point as a student of UVU, take a screenshot of that badge and turn it in, and that counts. All we need for that, the reason we need that is just to make sure that you understand how to use Canvas a little bit. And what I need from you, as I mentioned earlier, I am hoping that you guys keep your eyes open. If there's failed links or anything like that, let me know so I can fix them. And if things don't make sense, like I think a couple of you mentioned that all the due dates were off, that helps me because I thought I took care of it. Obviously, I didn't. And it just helps me to do a little bit better job for you. I would like you to commit, well, I need you to commit to coming back and checking on Canvas at least once a week, if not more often. Just refresh it and double check it. Several of you have mentioned that some of the Teams meeting links will show up here and not there or whatever. Keep your eyes on that and let me know as things get better or worse, and I will work with IT to see if we can fix it, because what I want to have happen is you will know that Wednesday evening at the same time every week, you will go over to the team's calendar and the link will be right there. That's what I'd like to have happen, so you guys don't have to worry about it. If that's not what's happening, let me know, because the other thing I can do is just make sure that I email everybody a link the morning of, or whenever. And as far as attendance goes, what we will be doing is after we're done, I will take the recording, upload it onto our YouTube channel, and then I will put a link of that into attendance for this week. And that's how you get the attendance points. You just go in and write down the 3 things that you learned, if whether or not you were on the Teams meeting live, or if you watched the recording later, you'll just write down 3 things that you learned during the course of our conversation. And that's how difficult that is. The 2 other things that I wanted to touch on really briefly, well, one less briefly than the other. You'll notice that there is a module called 7.a. This one, I want to give you an option. I was working with somebody so that everybody could do the service learning portion, because I found that a lot of the times, if you don't have the right partner when you're doing the service learning, they don't get back to you and you don't have time enough to do everything you want to do with that service learning partner. So in this module, I would like you to go through and just at least scan and read everything, and then decide if you want to do the service learning option or the artist research option. Whichever one you do, you're going to be spending about the same amount of time. But when you decide, you are not going to be held responsible for the time of the other one. For example, if you decide you're going to do the service learning option, you will not be held accountable for the artist research option. Now, the artist research option is taking one artist from a list out of 85 that we have and doing an in-depth report on them and a bibliography. The service learning option is finding a need in the community that your particular set of artsy-fartsy skills, I'm sorry, that didn't show much respect. Your particular set of art skills, let's say that, can help. So a service project would be, I'll just tell you some examples from the past. During COVID, there was a restaurant that a family had that was dying because nobody was coming in. Nobody knew about it. One of the students in my class, she was a custom skateboard designer, and she painted skateboards. So she started designing and building a special skateboard for this restaurant so she could publicize it on her social media channels. And some of the people whose equipment that she used in her work got excited and put it on their social media channels as well. And by the time she was done with her project, she had produced a beautiful custom skateboard that this family put up over the cashier's desk at the restaurant so everybody could see it. And she basically saved the business because people actually saw it on her social media and on the social media accounts of her suppliers, and people started going back to the restaurant. So that's one example. Another example is somebody was really involved with community theater as well as doing painting. And so she found that there was a high school production, well, a high school age production. It was a community theater again. And she went and worked with them to design and lead the student volunteers to do the painting and prep of all the set decorations for the production. Another person had a particularly difficult time, but he refused to quit. He had 3 or 4 community partners just disappear on him. They stopped responding to him, so he went on to the next. And he told me right towards the end of the term, I don't know what I'm going to do because nobody's getting back to me. I mean, it goes on for a while. I spent this much time, and then they just fizzle out. And I said, okay, well, in that case, let's do as much as we can of the research portion, in the time that you have left, and, and see how far that will go. And instead of doing that, he thought he'd try one more time. I actually found that there was a lonely gentleman in the neighborhood that nobody really had much time for, who had let his yard just go to pot, but this guy had chickens in the backyard. So this student organized a group of people, went back, designed and built a sculptural chicken coop for this old man, and also coordinated yard cleanup. And so it beautified the neighborhood. It brought a sense of community. And this gentleman that was a loner, actually made friends with several families as a direct result of it. And these are the kinds of things that can happen with the service learning. So there's lots of different opportunities if you want to do this, but you can just do one or the other and not both. And I think in this module, if you go down the list, everybody is responsible for everything except for right towards the bottom, you see either service learning option dash reflection or artist research option dash artist selection. You can only do one of those, but not both. Okay. And like I was saying, I was trying to set this up with a community partner, and it just did not work out. But the reason why that is labeled Module 7A is because Module 7D is going to be when you present the final report on either your service or your artist research. And what I've done, about every 3 weeks or so, there'll next be a Module 7B that will pop up, then a 7C, and then the last one is 7D. And the reason I do that is I tried to do that all in one module, but it looked way overwhelming and nobody wanted to touch it, so we don't do that anymore. And then if you guys want to pull up your Canvas course and look at Module 1 and open it up, you can see this is how most of the modules are kind of set up, roughly. There's an introduction and reading that you do. A lot of the times I don't have the reading explicitly its own separate little bit. A lot of the times it'll be an introduction or the other way around. But there's also a quiz. This is why, do you remember in that email I sent everybody, I gave you the title of the book to get. And then I also told everybody in the emails I sent, as well as in the very first Welcome to the Class module or course overview module, give you information about the book that we're using as our text. That book is called Shaping Space, and you need to get, there's a couple different textbooks that have that same title with different authors. You need to get the one that has those names of authors, and there's several different ways that you can get that text. Archive.org is one. You can also get it through Facebook Marketplace, because there's going to be a lot of other people that have taken this class last term that want to get rid of their book. You can get it from eBay. You can also rent it online through Amazon, and I think there's another platform as well that you can rent it from. Now this textbook, if we got it through the campus store, anybody want to guess how much it's going to cost? If we got it through the campus bookstore, it's going to be almost $100. I don't want you spending any more than about 25, 35 bucks for it at most. The record so far for getting a physical copy was off of Facebook Marketplace for, I think it was $4.99, and the person just went and picked it up. I think that's it. It was either $4.99 off Facebook Marketplace or $4.99 with free shipping from eBay. So, and that's not bad at all. But you are required to use it, because you'll see that quiz there that says Sculpture-Based Photography, Chapters 1 and 2. And I'm going to share this really quick. All right, can everybody see that? It says Sculpture-Based Photography. And then you go down and there's the quiz that says Sculpture-Based Photography, Chapter 1 and 2. When we put these quizzes together, we included in them some ringer questions that are only correct when you use the definitions or the information from the textbook. One example is, what is the simplest definition of a line? If you don't use the textbook, you're going to say the shortest distance between 2 points, but the textbook itself gives a very different response, and that textbook response is the correct one. So that's why you need access to the textbook. And I appreciate that some people are not going to be able to buy it, and that's fine. That's why we found an older version of the textbook on that archive.org that you can also use. The problem with archive.org, for a free account, it does kick you off every 45 minutes or an hour, but then you just let it sit for a sec, refresh the page, and log in again, and then you can finish the quiz. But these quizzes are designed, we wanted them to only take about 45 minutes or so at the very most. And then you'll notice on this quiz, it says background sculpture-based photography. Each of the modules that introduce a project talk about or have this section in there. And the background is you're going to be learning about between 4 and 8 artists that deal with these kinds of questions that we're discussing or addressing in that particular module. And in this one of the artists is Andy Goldsworthy, and who I particularly like. He's I believe he's a Scotsman who does nature-based ephemeral sculpture, which means that he'll go out in a walk and use the materials that he sees to make his sculptures, and then he'll take a photograph of it and he'll put those photos into like a coffee table book or something like that, and that's how he generates income for himself, his studio, and the people he employs. So really, really beautiful stuff. And there are several other artists that do similar. They don't do the same thing as he does, but they are all producing sculpture that is, the purpose of the sculpture is for to be a photographic subject. You know, and that's the point of it. That's why this module is called sculpture-based photography. And then you'll see underneath that is the artist review. And the artist review, and I want to be very, can everybody see the pale blue line that my mouse is on?
Yeah.
Okay. This artist review, there are going to be some questions on each of these, and I'm going to click this. And if it doesn't work, I'm going to try to share. Let me see if tell me, can you still see that? Can you see the new page?
Yeah.
Okay. What you're going to do is write an essay, you know, just a short essay, and I give you the prompts to talk about. But the artists that you're going to be addressing in that essay are the artists that were in that list talked about in the background for the same module. And if you open up the background, you'll see that there's a list of artists, and each of the artists has 1 or 2 videos for you to watch. And the videos are all, I believe, under 10 minutes. Okay, so I'll say that again because, and I have to be really clear on this, but I still get somebody, at least 1 or 2 people every semester that I don't know where they pick the artists from, but the artists need to be from the list of artists that are covered in the background for that module. So once again, the artist review essay that you do has to be drawn for the artists that are in that module. So I hope that that's clear for everybody. And some of those artists are talked about, if we scroll up a little bit, I'm sorry, if we scroll down a little bit, 7A, you see this line right here, artist list? Can everybody see that?
Yeah.
Okay. This artist list, there's about 85 artists. You're not responsible for all of them. What you're going to do is go through that artist list and select 20 of them to do the requirement for that. Or no, I'm thinking not 20, I think it's only 12. But that artist list gives you all the artists that we're going to be talking about throughout this course. And then when you do the essay that is specific to each of the modules, you are only going to be referring to the artists that are in the background section in the same module. So is that clear to everybody? Does that make sense?
No, will you say it one more time?
Okay. Each of the modules, you'll see that there is a section called background, and then there is a section right after it called artist review. The section called background, there's going to be about a half dozen artists in it with videos that introduce you to their work, and for each module. And then the artist review for that module will ask you different prompts to respond to those artists. But for each of the modules, the artist review that you write will only be about the artist that you were introduced to in that module. So for module 1, it says sculpture-based photography, and then it says background dash sculpture-based photography, and then artist review dash sculpture-based photography. So your artist review is only going to be about the artist that you see in the background labeled for that particular module. Does that make sense now?
Yes, thank you.
All right, great. That is a really good question because it can be frustrating as a student when that isn't very clear. And I'm trying really hard to make sure that it's clear. Now for this first assignment, what you're going to be doing is creating your own subject matter for sculpture-based photography, an experiment. I'm going to share this page as well. I think if I can, there we go. In your kit, you'll see that you have some file folders, and we got them just because it's an easy way to give you some tag board. And what we want you to do is make a little home that's about the size of a standard softball. So 2 of your fists put together. Make a little structure like that that's scaled down from the home that you live in, or it could be a fantasy house or whatever. And you can find images of this kind of thing all over the internet. And I can also, you know what, I'm thinking I may also put some photos of other houses people have done into this. The artist Charles Young has a whole website of different examples that he has done, making these little scaled down buildings. So I don't want you're not going to be copying any pattern that you see, but you can use a pattern that you find for reference. You're going to be building a little house that is about the size of a softball. And then what you'll be doing is taking and photographing that in several different situations using different techniques, looking at it through the camera. So you may, so again, you know, it's going to be about the size of 2 little fists, so not very big, about this big around. And then you're going to be setting it up and taking photos of it. And the photos are the things that you're going to be turning in. And I have had people do this, like they put a camera in the fridge and then take a photo as they're opening the door of the fridge. So you see the light of the fridge light turn on as the fridge door is opening. I've seen people put their camera phones inside of the building that they made, and then taking photos of when like a dog or a cat sniffs at it. Jason particularly likes taking his structure with him around on trips, and he'll set it up or have different people hold it and take photos of it like that. One of the coolest pictures he did is he made his little structure was actually a church. And while he and his family were driving, they found just a group of bikers. So he waved them over and asked them if they wouldn't mind helping him take a picture of this church. And it was a really great picture. It had all these rough and tumble bikers reverently holding this little toy model of a church. And it was a great one. But he's also taken a film of it next to a tiny stream. You can take a picture of your this in all sorts of different lightings, which I prefer you do. Just be creative about that. One thing that you're not to do is set this down and then take 5 pictures of it as you walk around it. It needs to be 5 different settings, 5 different lighting conditions. If you want to use filters for like with Adobe Paint or anything like that, you can do that for one of your photos too, and make it look like it's an old-timey daguerreotype or something. But be creative with how you visualize taking photos of this house. And then what you're going to be doing is submitting those pictures, 5 of those pictures that you take as part of the process of for grading. And then you're also going to be sharing them on a discussion. The grading depends on. I don't expect anybody to make a masterwork house, but I do expect that it to look finished, like it's held together well. When somebody just creates 3 walls of a paper house and calls it good to take photos of, that's really not very good. Also, when somebody puts it together and doesn't do a very good job taping it, so it's falling apart while it's being photographed, that's not very good. What is fun to see is when somebody puts this together and finds different things that they can do to the house structure itself to make it look like there's bark or a different kind of material for the roof, or do different things to it. That ends up being really good. One good example of this is a woman. Her dad used to work out in fields herding sheep, and what she made was a reproduction of the little shed that he would stay in when he was out there, sometimes during the winters. And so it had a tin roof, and it had like cedar shingles on it, and then it also had a chimney. So what she made was a little house that she painted the sides with a paint that had a bit of a texture to it, so it looked kind of like shingles. And she put aluminum foil on the roof to kind of mimic that. She cut holes out for the windows and put tissue paper behind them, so it looked like if it was lit inside, it looked like there was something in there. And then she also took some cotton and spread it out a little bit and tucked it into the chimney, so it looked like smoke from the chimney, and put a little red LED up the chimney on the inside of the structure. So when she turned it on, you could see the lights inside the house glowing through those tissue paper windows, as well as red glowing cotton, making it look like it was a fire going. And that turned out looking really cool. And it's a lot more fun for you as well to photograph. So I will, when I'm done over the next day or two, I will find a couple good photos that I can add to that, so you guys can see what that might look like. What a good example is. Now, as we move forward, this first week or two, I'm going to be, like I said, adjusting all the due dates. I need feedback from you as to whether or not they are too close together, or whether we have a good amount of time to finish this. What I am looking forward to is this first one, where we do make the house and take all the photos and download it and everything. I'm thinking we should be all done with the discussion and everything by next Sunday. So that's about 10 days. And I want to do that because I want you to have plenty of time to do the other stuff, because we have lots of other projects that we're going to be working on. But I think that's what I'm thinking we're going to go towards. So if you feel by next Wednesday, when we have our meeting again, that I've made it a little bit too short amount of time, or you could have done it faster, let me know, and we'll just continually adjust the due dates so it reflect what you think you can do and keep us going at a pretty consistent pace. All right. Now that's about all I want to do for today. We're going to have other ones where we're a little bit longer, but I don't want to do any that are over about an hour and a half. And if you have questions, the best thing to do is to ask them during the meeting, or if you can't make the meeting live, email them to me the day before, and I will try to address them. And I've already addressed the questions that people have asked already. Excuse me. So I would like to hear from each of you that are in attendance right now. Do you have one question? And if you don't have any questions, can you imagine a question that somebody who isn't here tonight might have about everything we talked about and about this next week? Who would like to go first?
I can.
Okay.
And
what's your question?
Sorry, I'm just wondering how, because I joined late because I was expecting the little pop-up screen to join the meeting. I'd forgotten you could have also done it on the Canvas screen. My question was, with would be needing supplies, like art supplies?
Well, the kit has most of what you need, and I would recommend. Um, so get the kit. That's your first priority, but it's also kind of fun to do other stuff. Like when you make this house, like I mentioned with the woman who made the little cabin, you don't have stuff in the kit to give texture to it, for example, or to add color to it. So add that. Uh, Whatever materials you already have at home, you can use those to kind of gussy up that house. Now, what makes the house a lot more interesting to photograph is designing it so that you have areas that light can pass through, like, for example, windows or doors areas. It's also interesting to do things with texture so that when you get close up with your camera, you can see interesting things going on through the lens. So be mindful of that. And people have collected bark and use that for roofing on their little model house, and that looks great. Other people have used torn pieces of tape and used the tape to kind of mimic shingles, and that's really interesting to do. One person, I guess, had a lot of time on her hands because she cut out a bunch of scale shingles out of craft paper to put on the side, and she cut out them. They were all separate. I thought that was absolutely horrible. If you want to do shingles on your house to give it texture, I would say cut strips that are about a ½ inch wide and as long as the house, and then cut them about halfway through widthwise, and then kind of bend that a little bit so you get a little bit of 3D action off the plane of the strip that you've cut, and then attach those to your house so that they overlap each other, and that will give you something mimicking shingles. I'm sorry, I'm looking around because I lost one of my shoes and I don't know what I did with it. Since I'm the only one in the room, it's obvious it's my fault. I just don't know where it is. Okay, I found it. And maybe it would be good to go on a walk and look for interesting things like leaves or grasses even, or other materials you might find, or maybe going through some of those drawers that nobody has ever cleaned out since the history of the apartment that you moved into. Maybe going through some of those drawers, you can find cool stuff to use. But just be mindful of that. Make this house something interesting to see, something that is interesting for you to photograph, and then also it's well crafted enough that it can endure the rigors of moving it around to different sites to take photos. All right, excellent question. Okay, who's next?
I can go next. Oh,
All
sorry,
right,
Jaden.
Emma.
Oh, okay. I'll go really quick. Sorry, Jaden. I was just wondering how many modules total there are. When I'm on the home or when I'm on the modules tab in Canvas, I only see the course overview module 1 and then the module 7A for the research or service learning section. And I was wondering how many total there are.
There's 6 total project modules, and then there's a couple other small ones that are thrown in. And then the 7th one is that research one where we have smaller sections of it throughout. And each week I'll upload the next several of them. So by the time we're done, about the first week of September, you should see all the modules out. I just don't want to overload you at the beginning because as you get a sense for how quickly it is for you to go through each one, it's a lot more bearable and doable. I just had a lot of students complain when they saw everything all at once, they felt overwhelmed. And I don't want you to feel overwhelmed because it's not overwhelming. This is not the most difficult class you could take in your university career. All right. So there are, and some of the smaller modules will be, we have one where we talk about art used as a tool for both divisiveness and unity. That's a short module. There's another short module where we talk about paper mache, and that allows you to focus a little bit on paper mache and then readdress one of the sculptures you've already made. And then we've also taken out some things. So Like, for example, one of the modules used to require you to make your another thing altogether, and now you're repurposing one of the things you made previously. So we're doing a few different things. And as I get a sense from you as well as to what you want to do, that also gives me an opportunity to change the module so it reflects more of what you would like to explore. All right, 3 more questions. Jaden, you want to go?
Yeah, for the polyhedra assignment, do we have to like pick one, print it out, and like work on it to get it ready for by next week?
Yeah. Or maybe we could just do it so that you submit a picture of it sometime over the weekend. But if you'd like to get it done and bring it with you next week, that'd be just fine. If you don't want to show it to everybody, you can just submit it in let's see, where is it? Hold on a sec. Getting ready for the first day of class 1. Okay, if you look at the very first module, it says prep for the first day of class. That's where I ask you to make the polyhedra. And when you submit that, you can just include the photo of it in that submission. You don't have to bring it to the next meeting we have. Does that answer your question? So you still need to do the polyhedron, but you can submit an image of it in that prep for the first day of class assignment, and you don't have to bring it with you the next meeting we have.
Okay.
Okay. Good question. All right, Kelsey or Alondra?
I already turned in that preparing first day of class, whatever you called it, with the numbers. That's what that was, right? Where it said like, I've got the book and this is my shape and everything like that. If I resubmit a photo of mine, will I need to retype all of the things? Does it usually like disappear?
It usually does disappear, but I think that you can attach a photo just on the comment section.
Oh, okay.
If it, and that shouldn't be a problem. And if it doesn't look like you can do it, you can just email it to me. That's fine too.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
All right, excellent question. Alondra.
I don't know if you went over this. I was just wondering like what the final's gonna look like, if it's going to be like that learning assignment, that the module 7 assignment, the learning research, or is there gonna be like an exam?
Well, we're required to give a separate final.
Okay.
And that final will be in the last week of finals. That's when everybody will get it. And it's going to be an assessment of what you learned, but it's not going to be a traditional test. And that the artist research project or service learning project is the last project that you do for the class, but it is not going to be the final. The final is going to be something separate. It's not going to be as bad as you think it's going to be, and it's not going to be as the stereotypical assessment. So
okay.
Does that help?
Yes.
Okay, all right, great. I think one of the worst things to endure as a student is when you've been plugging along all semester, taking test after test after test, and then the final has questions that you forgot from the very beginning of the term. And then you're dinged, even though you aced it the first time around, second time your brain is so fried that it's hard to think about it. And I try really hard to avoid giving those kinds of finals. All right, if that's good, if everybody's happy with that, and you're pretty confident that you understand what's going on, then that will be all from me, and we will just see each other again next Wednesday. If you've only been able to see a little bit of the meeting, you got in late or whatever like that, after the YouTube, after the recording is up on YouTube, go back and watch those portions that you missed. What we're going to be doing as soon as we're done today, and this is what happens after every time we have one of these, I'll take the recording, download it, which with my internet takes about 15 hours. Then I'll upload it onto YouTube, which with my internet takes about 15 hours. And then sometime, actually, no, it only takes about 1 or 2 hours altogether. I'll upload it onto YouTube, and then I'll put it into that attendance module that you'll see on your Canvas page. So if you go to your Canvas for this class and hit the modules tab, underneath the course overview is an attendance module. And on that, the only thing showing right now is attendance and participation, which is just a page to read. But then you'll start seeing attendance week 1, attendance week 2, and that's where you will find the link to our YouTube channel and the recording for today's session. And then you'll have until Sunday to watch it or rewatch it or respond if you were here live. And to what you'll be required to do, whether or not you attended live, is to go in and write down 3 things you learned. And they could be serious, they could be silly, it doesn't really matter. All you're providing is evidence that you were here, and either you were here live or you watched the recording later. All right. And I've gotten some, like one I thought was, I had set everything up the first time I was doing this last semester, and the table started collapsing underneath me. And so the student said it was fun watching the teacher self-edit all the swear words as he was dealing with the collapsing table. And that was one of the 3 things they listed that they had learned. So it can be anything, but it just shows, it gives evidence that you attended or watched the recording. All right. And I will get going on that as soon as we are done. So until next Wednesday, I hope you guys have an absolutely wonderful weekend and week. And I look forward to seeing you again next Wednesday. If you guys think that that is a hardship, that's a difficult date, then we can also talk about maybe switching it to Monday. Monday is the only other option that I can find. If that's going to be easier for you, or if Wednesday continues to work, that is great. Looks like Alondra is typing something. Oh, you're welcome. All right, great. Everybody, you guys have a great week, and I will see you next week.